All right, team. Just give me a second. I can hear some background noise, but here I am. Awesome. So, just wanted to, first of all, welcome to the Ravit show, guys. Such a pleasure. I'm super excited to host two of the leaders, Kip Hugo, Program Director, IBM, and Ryan Yekel, Product Evangelist, Databand, and IBM Company. Today, we will be discussing data observability, how more data observability leads to better governance, and much more. Just wanted to give a quick bio about and background about our. Just give me a second. Yeah, so sorry about this. I was hearing some background noise, but I'm back here again. A little about Kip Hugo. He's the program director, like I mentioned, at IBM. Kip is a program director of product marketing at IBM. Kip is responsible for articulating the point of view and value proposition of IBM's data-driven technologies that delight customers and deliver business outcomes. In this role, Kip's focus is on helping clients modernize their data management by leveraging data fabric architecture. A little about our second guest, Ryan Yekel. He's the product evangelist at Databand, an IBM company. Ryan comes from a background rooted in product marketing and innovative startups. He started his career in the data and software testing space, working for CGI and Macy's. However, he quickly entered the startup world and hasn't looked back. Before joining Databand and IBM company, Ryan had successfully built marketing programs for startups over the last few decades. Includes brands like QA Symphony, Tricentis, and Key Factor. All right, I already see a few of the folks putting in hashtags databand, and that's right. We're giving databand has been super awesome to do a very cool Nintendo Switch giveaway. So what you need to do is obviously register to the link that you see in the description and type in hashtag databand in the chat. But also let us know where you're joining from. So and bring on any questions for our guest today, because we'll be covering a good ground around data observability, about how more observability leads to better governance and much more. So yeah, looking forward to that. All right, I think without any further ado, it's time for us to bring up our guest here. So let's do it. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Kip. Welcome to the Ravit Show. Such a pleasure to have you both here.
Hey, Ravit, it is a pleasure to be here as well.
What's going on, man? Good to talk to you. See a lot of Databand love in the comments there, so that makes us feel excited about the chat we're going to have today.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And I'm sure the audience might have some interesting questions for you around data observability, around data governance. So audience, feel free to bring them up here, because Ryan is excited, Kev is excited to obviously answer those for you guys. I see someone named as LinkedIn user. You can know Ryan from Tricentis. Hey, Ryan.
I'm a popular person, I guess people follow me to different companies, I guess. But yeah, I used to work at Tricentis. Great company in the test automation space. Even though we're talking about data today, they're a great company in test automation. So if you need some of that stuff, check them out.
Awesome. All right. So obviously for our audience, I'm sure people would love to learn a little more about you both. So how about introducing yourself, and also if you can tell us a little about how Databand was founded and now it is a part of IBM. So we would also love to learn a little about that.
I'm happy to kick us off, and then I'll turn it over to Ryan, who will provide the context around Databand. So as you've heard, my name is Kip Hugo. I lead product marketing for IBM in the data and AI space, very specifically around data architectures and data fabric. So the idea is how do we help our clients simplify data consumption within the organization so that they are spending more time using that data to drive their business rather than finding the data, cleaning the data, and all that, all those activities around data. So that's the role that I play. And Ryan is my partner in crime, and clearly a good partner in crime, just seeing all the love for Ryan. So Ryan, let me hand it over to you, and you can introduce yourself, although you don't need any introduction, it seems.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, no, I'm Ryan. So, I came I started out in Databand back in January of last year, came over here just because it was a very exciting space to be a part of. Like Ravit was saying, kind of a serial startup junkie. And so I only go to places and companies I know that are disrupting the space. So Tricentis being one of those, Key Factor being another one. QA Symphony was a company I was a part of before back in 2014. So Databand definitely a company in the observability space, which we're going to be talking about today, which really attracted me to be a part of this company. So obviously we got bought by IBM, which is super exciting as well. And we're here to talk to you about kind of how governance and observability play together today.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Thanks for those introductions. Obviously, Ryan, I have a question for you around, and I'm sure the audience is kind of also curious about this. When we talk about data observability, first thing, let's start with learning what is the definition of data observability and where did it come from?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Obviously, got to start from a common knowledge here. So I know that probably people have heard of data observability before, or at least the term observability. It's actually a hard word to say if you think about it. Like I think I stumble over saying observability a lot. I also mumble, so my wife gets on to me about that. But kind of how it all got started really comes from a growth out of application performance monitoring, which is traditionally viewed as enterprise observability, right? Full stack observability, things like that. And Ravit, if you can pull up the quick slide right here from Gartner, I'll kind of talk through that. So you see like where data observability is in this area that you see here. You see that's in this trigger innovation category. And this is from the hype cycle for data management. And the reason why it's in this trigger category is because it's an area where if you look at the way where observability is on cloud operations on another hype cycle that we have, you'll notice that it's actually at the very top. And so what that tells you is that there is this maturity around tools like Instana or New Relic or Datadog, things like that, Dynatrace, things like that are really around looking at the performance of your applications in production or microservices or cloud infrastructure, things like that, right? Well, what's happened basically is that you've had the reason why Gartner is recognizing this as this trigger category, so to say, innovation category, is because a lot of those software engineering teams and leaders in software engineering, they're very familiar with CI/CD processes, DevOps processes, using Python code and Scala and PySpark and all these things that they use to really build their modern software application development. Well, a new space has popped up, which is data engineering and data platforming. And so you see a lot of them moving over to become data engineering teams. But what's going on is the same problems that you're seeing that you saw with software quality and software reliability and software bugs, things like that. Now that's happening to the data space. Now you have data quality, data reliability, data bugs are happening. And there wasn't really something there to really help out. And so that's where data observability comes in. That's where you look at and go, how can we put something in place? It's basically like a bunch of cameras inside of our data pipelines that allow us as data engineers to move really fast, but alert us right away when something goes on. So that's how data observability comes in. More of like a nice, clean definition. We've got one of our definitions as well. If you just go to Databand.ai and look at kind of what we say, but it's basically a blanket term for understanding the health and state of your data within the systems you have. So you have all these activities and technologies, but when you combine them, you have to be able to understand how to identify what the problem is, troubleshoot it, and resolve these issues in real time. Very similar to application performance monitoring goes on as well. So hopefully that's a good definition of data observability.
No, yeah, 100%, Ryan. I think that kind of clarifies a lot of, for me as well, where I hear a lot of, definitions around data observability, but this was kind of real good insights there. So thanks for that, Ryan. Also, quickly, actually wanted to pull something, a comment from the audience, actually one from YouTube that I see. What is the best way to start a career in data observability? What do you guys think?
Well, I would say like starting a career in data observability really it's not really a career. So you'd want to start a career in data engineering or data science or data platform. And this is actually, this kind of leads into a little bit of a next slide. And Kip, I know we're going to get to you in a minute. I feel like I've been talking this entire time. I told you this was going to happen, man. I told you, if you get me on a presentation, I'm going to start talking. You got to tell me to shut up.
No worries. No worries.
But this piggybacks off the question that somebody had, which is the best way to start, your career in data observability. Really, it's a career in data engineering. And this is basically what people will sell you if they're in data engineering today. They may say something like, well, I already have data monitoring in place. Why do I need data observability? Well, it really comes down to, if you look at what's all going on in the landscape of your data, and this is actually a really cool graphic that was done by one of our tech leaders over at IBM. So I basically said this and they drew this, this is not my drawing. So this is a way better drawing than I could ever do. My 6-year-old daughter could do a better drawing than I can. But basically what's going on here is it's basically showing you all the different complexities that could go on, and where monitoring isn't really a sufficient area to really, it only goes to a certain point. So whereas you have all these data producers, you've got APIs, you've got CSV files, you've got all these different types of files and data parts that are coming into a lake. Maybe it gets transformed and moves into a warehouse. All of those issues that are going on, if you don't know about them as they're in motion, then the monitoring or alerting happens too far to the right. And so what we want to be able to do in observability and solutions out there, not just Databand, what we're trying to do is shift left this data quality and data reliability problem. So you're able to detect and look at these things as they're in motion and as they're going on. So you can reduce things like mean time to detection and mean time to resolution around data quality issues, like process quality that's never kicked off, or a pipeline that failed, or a null record or a schema change. All that gets into seeing how they change, which is really monitoring is this limited view. You understand kind of what happened, a little bit of an isolated system. You have the static detection. It's very reactive. Where observability is, it's not just the pipeline failed. It's like, okay, beyond the pipeline failing or beyond something failing, or there's an issue going on, what's the holistic view of that? That's where it gets into impact analysis and data lineage, or why did this actually happen? What are the dependent systems that are on this? And then it's more of a proactive approach that allows the engineering team and platform team to learn more about how these pipelines and data flows are actually interoperating so they can fix them better. So that's a little bit of an explanation for, I know the person asked about how you start a career in that, but I would really start a career in engineering or platforming, and observability is just a tool that you have to make sure you're constantly monitoring the health of your data, because that data eventually gets to consumer and you don't want that to be incorrect.
Okay. Yeah. Pretty cool explanation there, Ryan. One question that I have for you, Kip, is around the data governance. How do you define data governance, and how has it evolved, and what's the connecting point with data observability?
Yeah. In fact, I think as Ryan was walking through the mean time to discovery, mean time to resolution, I think you begin to see the connection between data governance and data observability. So data governance, think of it as a framework. It promotes the availability, quality, and the security of an organization's data through different policies and standards, right? So this framework includes people's processes and technologies. And the end objective is, how do we deliver reliable and trustworthy data to data consumers within the organization so that they can do whatever they need to do, right? Drive business outcomes, maximize the value chain. They are dependent, and it's all contingent on this data. So a simple summary or framework to think about this process or this structure is, data governance helps you in terms of knowing your data. So just understanding the meaning of it, the business terms, the glossaries associated with your organization, how it's used, and policies around that. Governance is about trusting your data. So having confidence in, and here's a keyword that you'll hear over and over, quality of the data. What's the source? What's the content? How usable is this data? Sometimes, you may need provenance of the data so that you can actually use it. And that's where you begin to see that intersection with what Ryan was talking about in terms of the quality aspect of the data, and where data observability really complements data governance, or perhaps vice versa. Data governance also has to deal with the protection of the data, so adherence to regulatory compliance, really the organizations properly stewarding the data that they have. So whenever we give our data to different organizations, as a consumer, as a customer, we are hoping, and not hoping, we are trusting that organization will safeguard that data. And that's part of governance, ensuring that people who are using data within the organization have the appropriate authority to utilize it. And finally, data governance is actually about using data. I think there can be that notion out there that data governance is about locking data, saying no to the utilization of data. But what it really is about is, once you've established processes around how to properly govern this data, then the next thing we actually do as an organization is make it available to data consumers, and in fact, make data consumption simpler and easier. That way you have faster time to value with the different products or solutions that are relying on this data. And so data observability really helps with that dynamic aspect of the data movement. So to Ryan's point, to ensure that you're catching some of those issues ahead of time, that way it doesn't get into the pipelines and downstream into the data user. So that really is a summation, if you will, of data governance and just that interplay with data observability.
Okay, those pretty cool insights there, Kip. So thanks for sharing. I see a few questions obviously coming in, and I'll be
George.
taking those.
See George asking some. My boy George, what's up, man? How's it going, dude? Good.
So,
Glad you could join this. I saw him a swag bag. I gotta send him a swag bag.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, George is out there. He's into data governance, and that's why he's keen on a few questions around this. But let's take this one from him. When should data observability be tackled? Which is the best timing for that?
Yeah, so I think that, so if you go to slide 6, and George, you set us up here. We didn't tell you to say this thing here. So this may answer some of your questions about when or why, or maybe some compelling events or whatever. But before I get to what's going on here, let me kind of explain, make a connection to security, which is a space I was in at my last job. So at my last job, I was at a company called Keyfactor, and they do PKI as a service, so public key infrastructure as a service, or they do what's called certificate management. So if you think about all your TLS and SSL certificates that are out there, what they were doing was they were managing all of these certificates and keys, SSH keys, things like that, so that you knew where these things were, so you could either auto renew them or provision them to certain devices, right? The reason why I say all that is because most of the time, when a company decides they need to buy something from Keyfactor, like a certificate management solution or PKI as a service, they actually don't know when. Only when they know when is when something bad happens. So the most common thing that we heard from a compelling event that we would get, most common thing we heard constantly was either one or two things. It was, hey, we had a certificate outage, and this got all the way up to our CEO or executives, and they said, why the heck was there an outage? So that's number one. And they go, oh, it's a rogue certificate. Well, we got to get that under control. We can't have downtime, right? And the other one was around expertise. So if you had a PKI expert that left and they didn't have that, they needed something to actually do that. So this is kind of the same thing with data observability. A lot of times people come to us, they're almost anticipating a problem that they can't really articulate. So a lot of times they'll be talking about data quality, data reliability, but a lot of times they'll also talk about a particular event. So let's say something like, we didn't know a pipeline was down until a week later. We didn't know that we had a process that was broke, for hours on time. We didn't realize that a piece of data didn't meet their SLA until we were in breach of that SLA. So there's a lot of these compelling events that happen that really get to the when to look at data observability. But to answer your question a little bit further, really, when it comes to getting to this proactive measure, this is where our point of view kind of comes in, which is like, what can you start with? The first thing you want to do is really look at, how can we set up pipeline execution? So that means, how can we tie into all the different processes and pipelines? If you have Airflow, you have DBT, you have Spark running, all these different things are going on within your process or pipelines. you got to set up to make sure it's moving. Like that's number one. Number two is the latency. That's like around, okay, even if it's moving, how can we make sure that's arriving on time? If we're hitting the threshold of going, hey, we tell you that the pipeline should be complete in 2 minutes. And if it goes past that, how can we alert you on that? Structure and content is really around schema and the actual data itself. Are things changing within that? And the last one is like, did the data get to the actual location around lineage? And then also, what impacts does it have downstream? So if you have a pipeline or data problem that's going on and it impacts downstream, you want to be able to know that right away and be able to alert people around those issues. So this is kind of what we talk to customers a lot about, but it really, getting back to your question, George, a lot of times people come to us at step one, because that's like their first step in maturity in their data observability journey.
Okay. Yeah, I think Ryan, that's a very good explanation, and I'm sure George is happy with the answer there. So thanks for that. But also, since you spoke a little about the data quality and lineage, my next question to both of you is, how does data observability play into these ideas of data quality, process quality, lineage, and impact analysis? And how does it all work? So would love to learn a little about from you guys.
We'll give Ryan a breather. I'll take a quick stab at this as he catches his breath.
Need some water, man.
But be ready, because I know he has very insightful things to say about this. So I'll kick us off by saying, from a data governance perspective, data quality, it really is a foundation of business-ready data, right? So I'll keep going back. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is to get data that your data consumers can use easily and quickly. But at the center of that, the questions that arise, like whether it's a provenance question, is can we have confidence in this data? Do we know? And this is where lineage comes in, right? And that just the audit trail of the data through the pipeline. Who has touched it? What are the impacts of it? And ultimately, how usable is this data? And so that from a data quality perspective, that is what we're thinking about in terms of governance. And those are some of the questions that data observability begins to answer for us, going back to identifying those issues while the data is in motion. Because I think one of the things that you'll see in many organizations is it's when the data is at rest that you're performing these analyses to identify these issues. But one of the challenges with that is what happens if that data moves downstream. Data observability, Ryan, it is a mouthful. Data observability helps in terms of identifying those issues upstream and ensuring that the remedies are applied such that the end consumers are dealing with, again, good, usable data. And I think I'll use that word, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And you're really trying to eliminate that. And again, back to time to value, how quickly can we get our data to be usable within an organization so that it's driving insights for us? And also I think from a data engineer's perspective, how do you ensure that they're doing higher level activities, right? Move them away from the data cleansing and things of that nature to other activities that don't tie up the time. I think there's a test out there that data engineers spend up to 2 days just in terms of data prep perspective. So data observability is actually helping in remedy that and remedy that higher up in the process. Ryan, I think you've had some time to breathe. Do you want to chime in on just add your thoughts to that?
Yeah. I mean, that's where a lot. This gets back to a little bit of the shift left model that I spoke about earlier, which was and Kip's right when he talks about kind of this data in motion versus data at rest. And this is where observability kind of is something that is still maturing in its market understanding and awareness, because, like I said, like Kip and I will talk about, so many things that governance talks about, like quality and lineage and reliability. And even in data testing, for example, a lot of these words are used interchangeably. And so if you talk about data quality or data reliability, you may hear something completely different from different companies that are out there. Where observability is really tying into that whole sphere is we're trying to give automatic detection and automatic suggestions for resolution as the data is moving in your current process, right? There's this analogy that this may or may not work. Hopefully this will work. Hopefully you got a lot of good like Formula One racer, like Formula One fans out there. I've never been to a Formula One event, but I keep hearing awesome things about it. I hear there's like a really cool Netflix series on it. I gotta get into it. Anyway, so in Formula One, what's the whole goal of Formula One? You're trying to win the race. Duh. Okay, great, Ryan. But what are you trying to do? You're trying to drive the car as fast as you can around the track and not crash and reach the finish line. Okay. Well, did you know, and I didn't know this for a while, that a Formula One car has like basically hundreds of sensors that's in the car that's being radioed back to the driver and also the pit crew to let them know, hey, you need to slow down or go faster. Hey, your tire's lower. You need to come in to change your tire. Hey, there's something wrong with the engine. Hey, you need to come in for gas. Hey, so what it's doing is giving you cues around the quality and reliability of the car as it's still driving. So without that knowledge, without those sensors that are going on, you're just going to drive the car as fast as you can, but you crash, or you may end up running out of gas, or you blow a tire. So what observability is doing around this quality lineage reliability is that it's giving you those hundreds and hundreds of sensors as your data is in motion. That's not going to slow down the car, but will tell, hey, the data team or the platform team, hey, there's a problem. We just found out a problem here. There's an issue. You gotta address it. This is a critical problem. If you do not fix this, you're gonna have downstream impacts. And like a car, you're gonna end up crashing the car. So that's a good way to kind of understand it from an analogy perspective as well. And then the other part is a lot of times when we talk about lineage, people get hung up on this idea of lineage. Observability is really lineage, not on the business technical sense, but on the impact analysis sense. And so when we provide observability or lineage solutions or lineage functionality, a lot of it is different from traditional lineage tools that are out there. We're trying to pinpoint and show you exactly where the downstream or upstream impacts could be, but we're not doing it in a way for business modeling. We're doing it as a way to say, hey, these were impacted because of this breach. And you can quantify that severity of the impact and understand that this is something we got to look out for in the future.
Yeah, I think Ryan, you brought that analogy very well in terms of the F1 race, and I'm sure you should be watching the Netflix series as well. I've seen it; it's wonderful. I'm sure it will get your mind racing to another level about observability, and you might find more ways to connect it with data observability. But fantastic one there.
One thing I did want to make, Ravit, is because I think that, so Ruben asked a question and then George asked a question as well around governance. And let me just explain this. The reason why we had this topic around observability or governance, the reason why we're having this discussion is because people that we talk to today may be from the governance team that's hearing about observability, and they're trying to figure out, how does this play into governance, right? Kip gave a really good explanation and a really good overview of kind of how governance and observability are kind of coming together. But really what's going on is that you have governance. It's a well-defined discipline that's been around for a while now, but now observability is being looked at as possibly something that could be factored into the overall governance story. And so I know that George was asking a question, or mentioned a question around like, who are you actually talking to? The governance team, the CDO team, data stewards. Most of the time when we talk to companies, it's primarily the data engineering team and the platform team. That's primarily what we're dealing with in the science team. However, we do have other people that come to us that have governance titles. And the reason why they're bringing it too, because it has that connection back to quality and has that connection back to reliability. But it's not the same reliability and quality that they've traditionally known of. It's a more of this in-motion alerting that's going on, more incident management, that they're hearing this from different teams and they're investigating. Well, let me look in to see what this observability thing really is. So I just want to quickly answer some of those questions that came up there.
And if I may just chime in very quickly, and then we'll get back to the questions. And we will be touching on this actually shortly. The latter questions is incidentally, the Gartner released its Magic Quadrant on data quality, and you will see that when they talk about the critical capabilities of data quality, capabilities such as monitoring and detection automation and augmentation are mentioned, and those again are coming. If you think about them, those are traditionally data observability. So I think there's an acknowledgement in the industry that data observability certainly undergirds or fortifies the data governance function, and it's really a necessity. And I know there's a lot of repetition here, but I think it's a very important part. That proactive alerting, that proactive notification, that proactive resolution or remediation of issues really helps from a governance perspective with the downstream activities. So I just wanted to throw that in as well.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points. And, just a related question that I had, Kip, is around when we talk more about, the role of data governance and data observability in an organization, how does the information architecture looks like there? Just wanted to learn a little more about the information architecture, to be honest.
Yeah, from an information architectural perspective, I think there are a number of things to think about. And let's put on the hat of a CDO. And George, I think George asked this question. This might begin to touch on some of the questions that you have. The thought that I think the primary objective of that CDO or data leader, any data lead for that matter, is how do I simplify the movement of data and migration of data and get it to my end users as quickly and as simply as possible, while at the same time adhering to regulatory compliances, whatever regulatory issues that I need to. And so I think one of the things that data governance helps with, or that data governance looks at on this impact from data observability, is just the dynamic nature of regulatory compliance. So I think we are all familiar with GDPR, and since then, whether it's CCPA, there are all these regulations that are coming out in terms that impact the governance of the data, and not even just from a data governance perspective, but even more specifically from an AI governance perspective, which ties back to it. Right. So whether it's in 2022, I think the Singapore AI Verify is an issue, is a law that's coming out. There's the Canada Bill C27. Even the US has an AI Bill of Rights that organizations need to be thinking about. So from an overall information architecture perspective, the question becomes, how are organizations dynamically evolving with that and embedding that into the governance process so that they are not caught off guard, right? And this is where the automation and the integration, the automation that I mentioned, automation and augmentation becomes key. And that's where data observability and data governance work together to ensure that that's happening. The other thing in terms of from an information architecture I'll talk about is, think of the changing environments that organizations are dealing with. Multi-cloud or hybrid environments is something that's a reality for most organizations. And what that means is you now have data strewn across not just different environments or landscapes, data estates, but you're also dealing with different jurisdictions. So how do you then govern data within that context? And this is where we talk about really the centralization of the data intelligence, so that you do not say that you need to centralize your data in order to govern it, but rather centralize the management or the intelligence of that data so that you can continue to effect the governance across that distributed landscape without necessarily relying on different point solutions or this huge movement of data. And again, that's another area where data observability complements that data governance, especially where, again, back to that, where that movement of data is happening cross-border. And as I said, and I know I'm going to be a broken record by the time this is done. Those are issues that are raised early in the process, ensure resolution well before this data gets pushed downstream. So those are some of the information architecture considerations from a governance perspective that impact or have complementary components coming in from data observability.
Okay, yeah, pretty cool. Ryan?
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what Kip said, when we talk, so when it gets to a lot of the governance stuff that Kip was talking about in different environments, multi-cloud, hybrids, et cetera, what we deal with a lot from our perspective is customers are on a cloud journey. And so, for example, like a lot of times we'll be talking to customers that, like, maybe let's say they have a version of Apache Airflow that is on kind of behind their own firewall, but they want to move to something like Google Cloud Composer, or they want to use more of a managed service on Airflow, and they want to put all their new production environments on Airflow. Well, what we're able to do is during that process to make sure that their movement to the cloud or movement to these different workloads that are in the cloud is be able to monitor any new workload that gets on there. And so we do with a lot of like data migration use cases, specifically on the data pipeline area, where we can say, okay, every single net new thing you're putting online, attach it in an observability solution so that you're already starting the hygiene to monitor and observe these things as they get added more and more into production. Because most of our customers, we're not a testing solution, we're an observability solution. So most of our customers that are out there using it, it's predominantly being used in production environments and predominantly in product. They're delivering more data products versus, let's say, something like HubSpot dashboard. We're not going to play in a lot of those areas. We play in a lot of the more complex organizations that are moving to the cloud and having more of a product. They're supporting more of like a data product as well.
Okay. Yeah, those are great insights. So one logistical question I've seen in the comments is the PPT presentation going to be shared? Kip, Ryan, can we share the presentation?
Yeah, we can share this. I can show you the whole presentation. These are some slides, so I can share the whole presentation if you want. So. Definitely.
Okay, yeah, I can actually put it out on my LinkedIn post and tag you guys, those who would want to, have a look, and also put it on the website if you guys want to download it. So that's there. Okay, let's take one quick question here, which is kind of the favorite question for the audience, it looks like. So you're from Manisha. How is data monitoring different from data observability? Interesting question.
So I answered that question at the very beginning, but let me give you a quick flyover of it just so that you can see it. So you can go ahead and share that slide there. So essentially, monitoring is in a limited view of what's going on in the system. So if you just say, hey, we had an alert around a service that's down, that would be monitoring. But if you were to say, hey, we had an alert that service is down, here's the root cause, here's the impact of the dependencies on that service, here's where you go to fix it, that's more observability. So monitoring is more of and a lot of times people will say, hey, we've built some lightweight monitoring solution, but it doesn't go deep enough. We don't really know the what, where, and why. We just know the what happened, but we know how to impact dependent systems. It's not doing things like using ML anomaly detection. It's more static alerting. And it's not dynamic when it comes to being able to proactively fix these things before it gets to a resting state. So that would be a quick overview of it. I know I mentioned it earlier. You can go back and watch. I know this will be live or on replay afterwards.
Yeah, and exactly. I'll be sharing those slides so you guys can actually have a look at it much deeper. All right, one last question here from audience that I wanted to pick was just from Christine. Would you say an ideal situation would be to develop a data and AI strategy that conforms to all technological concerns that data engineers have in an organization? This is a very broad question though, but still, do you want to pick it up, Kip?
Yeah, I'll give it I'll take a stab. And yes, this is actually something that we see with many of our clients. And one of the starting points, and Christine, I hope I get to the heart of the question, is actually, even before we talk about a data strategy, is aligning that data strategy to the overall business strategy. Because they're very often that you can have data strategies that focus on data for the sake of data projects without that overall business alignment, right? And so what are we doing in terms of driving up towards that business objective? And then the simple answer to your question would be yes. How do we think through a strategy that is, and I know this is a term that people don't like, but I will use it, that is future-proofing? Because one of the things that we want to avoid is a scenario where in this constant perpetual modernization phase, instead with an appropriate data strategy, you're able to bring in composable and modular services and solutions that can solve for that overall business objective, that incorporate the important aspects, whether it's governance, whether it's integration, whether it's data observability. Those are all built into that data strategy and allow for evolution as the organization changes, as well as the environment within that organization changes, right? So a holistic data strategy is certainly something, yes, that I would say yes. And that would also capture, right, the concerns that the data engineers have. And the other thing I'll say is I think it also does is enables your CDO, your CIO, your CTO to actually come together and are working from the same page. And I think that ultimately does help the end user, which is the data consumers within the organization. So I believe somewhere in there, Christine, I have answered your question, but if you have additional questions, please send them our way. And Ryan, let me give you an opportunity to chime in if I don't know if you have something you wanted to add to that.
No, you nailed it, man. Totally nailed it. I don't think you didn't hear me out my take on this. I think you killed it.
All right. Thanks for that, Cape, and good question, Christine. There. Also, I'm sure people want to learn a little about Databand as well. So, can you tell us more about Databand.ai, which is now an IBM company, and how is it helping the modern data team and data engineers to get to next level?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit like a little selfish plug, obviously, but so Databand, we're a cloud first data observability solution. Obviously, now an IBM company. We're a part of IBM Data Fabric, and one of the great things about this integration or this connection with IBM is kind of twofold. So one is we didn't talk about IBM's focus on Data Fabric and how we fit in there. But just safe to say that we are a part of that Data Fabric ecosystem and architecture, irregardless of the different technologies you have. And so the majority of our customers actually don't use IBM products for the most part from the Databand side. We're seeing more traction in our customers. Now we're bringing this solution to them. But a lot of times when we go into our current customers, what we're doing is, and what we're talking to them about is, what are the other things that are in your tech stack, your data stack, that may be used by different teams, right? And not every company out there is fully on, let's say, one vendor solution anymore. That's not what happens anymore. And so what's great is that we have lots of different customers now that we're able to go to and talk about, hey, are you using things that are part of your modern data stack? Are you using things like Apache Airflow or Spark? Are you doing using code-driven pipelines like in Python or Java? Are you using dbt to do transformations? Can we help you monitor those? Are you using things like Databricks for Lakehouse? We can monitor a lot of the processes and pipelines that you have within that current process just by adding us in. And so when we go to either a brand new customer or a current customer with IBM, our value add is to make everything you're doing just more productive. We're not ripping anything out. We're not replacing anything. We're meeting engineers and platform teams where they are, and we're solving those issues that they keep coming to us that are around reliability and around quality and around impact analysis that they're not getting today. And you don't want to have, I think Fivetran came out recently of a report, a few maybe it was this year or last year, but they basically said that almost half of your data engineering time is spent maintaining and fixing pipelines. If you think about that, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time you're spending maintaining and fixing pipelines, right? And that's without observability tied in, right? That's you don't even know what's going on. So that's what we do. We want to come in, detect earlier, resolve faster, and help you deliver trustworthy data that will also be a part of your data governance model as well, that can then be accessed and distributed. So that's a quick pitch. But yeah, really, that's what we do.
Awesome. And where do you see data observability in the next 2 to 3 years? Kind of interested to learn more about that.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be, definitely in the space, right? I mean, there's a lot of observability solutions that are out there. And so I think IBM was first to market in terms of acquiring a leading technology in the space, right? Lots of other tools are out there. I'm not afraid to mention them, Big Eye, Monte Carlo, Unravel Data is kind of getting into it. I know they've probably been on your show. I know they've probably been on your show multiple times, right? All of these companies are great companies, and I think that you're going to see some consolidation with that, whether it is through companies like similar companies similar to IBM acquiring them to add to their observability stack. I mean, one of the other reasons why IBM acquired Databand was that we are really the only solution out there or company out there that can provide application observability with Instana, which is a recent purchase 2 years ago, data observability with Databand, and then with OpenScale, we do ML and AI model observability. And so you're going to see, I think, in the market some consolidation, obviously, with some of these startups getting acquired, just like we did. And then you're going to see kind of a fuller story around observability. I think the analysts are going to start talking about observability outside of traditionally, which has been APM, and really getting into full scale, full stack observability across your landscape. And then that's really where you can have a full CIO, CTO conversation that's not just, hey, let's talk to the data team, then we're going to talk to the engineering team, then we're going to talk to, the compliance team, whatever it is. You talk about observability on a full scale, then you're talking to the highest of high when it comes to this problem that needs to be resolved.
I think for sure, Ryan, this is great explanation in terms of, where do we see the data observability in next 2 to 3 years. And I really like your transparency about how it's going to move very quickly and what's going to happen next. So great analogy there. Thanks. Kip, what do you think?
I do want to add to that, and I a few minutes ago mentioned or referenced the Gartner Magic Quadrant on data quality solutions. So IBM was named a leader, and one of the things that they talked about is and if you look at the critical capabilities, is they mentioned that data quality solutions are going to transition from standalone applications into a set of integrated platforms. So, and I think Ryan touched on that. And data quality solutions are now going to be included. They're viewing features such as data catalog, data observability, and data preparation as part of that integrated platform. So basically, and I feel like I'm, in a sense, not being redundant, but underscoring what Ryan already mentioned, that coming together in terms of an integrated platform is going to be, I think, where the industry is headed, and data governance and data observability being part of that integrated capability, all available, all delivered on a singular platform, because there's a recognition that data quality, and you can see this even coming from leading analysts, data quality is now part and parcel, or at least data observability is now part and parcel of the data quality aspect of data governance. So there's clearly a movement for the two capabilities coming together. And again, there's a complementary nature between the two. So, and again, the acquisition of Databand clearly was part of the reason that IBM moved in that direction, recognizing just the leading role that they have in this space.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Great insights, Ryan. Cape, one question that I see in the audience is, are you guys coming up with any book, or should I be plugging, Ryan, the book that we are planning?
You could plug the book that we're planning. We're going to do a book with Ravit here coming out in the new year. We've got some books on our website as well. I mean, honestly, nice. I would tell everybody to go to IBM.com and go and download the Magic Quadrant for data quality solutions. That's it's literally right off the press. Like we just, I think it came out, was it yesterday or today, Kip?
Yeah, yesterday.
Yesterday, just came out. So, I mean, and that's got a good overview of kind of some of the stuff that me and Kip talked about. And they talk about observability in that. I think that's the first step in having observability be more and more included specifically for data in these quality and reliability conversations, and not just at the governance level or even at the software testing level. So, or data testing level. So I definitely think that that'd be a great resource for everyone to do. Oh, Eitan just put it in there. Thanks, man.
Yeah, exactly. I was just finding the post. I got the post, and yes, there it is. You guys can actually have a look at the quadrant, and all sounds good. One last question for you both, Ryan, Cape. If folks want to reach out to you, where can they reach out, learn more about data observability, data governance, and in general about data engineering as well? So, Kip, where can they reach out to you?
Kip, you're on TikTok, right? Aren't you on TikTok? Big TikTok guy?
I'm slowly working my way to TikTok. I think I'm not there yet, but definitely I'm on LinkedIn, and I think, and I'll also send out contact details with whatever follow-up is going to be going out. So we'll provide that.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. That's the only thing I'm really on is LinkedIn. So yeah, reach out to me on there, and happy to follow up or get you to the right person that can talk to you more about it. Again, we want to make this conversation more of like a starting point conversation around governance and observability, and kind of see where it goes. And I think that we at least whet some appetites here as we close out.
Yes, definitely. I think, Ryan, that's a very important topic going forward, in how you guys have actually contemplated it very well with data governance kind of makes it much more important, because those were pretty great insights, and I'm sure the audience felt the same. But thank you very much once again for joining the Ravit Show, Ryan, Cape, and to our lovely audience for asking such amazing questions. Thanks again, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Take care.
All right,
Awesome.
cheers.